Hey everyone, and welcome back to Crossing Crafts.
Yeah, guys, welcome
we gotta
back
vote
to
on what
Crossing
we're gonna be
Crafts.
crafting this week, so let's discuss.
Guys, I'm the imposter. Vote for me.
Kirby, that's actually quite the compelling argument. I think we should do something cringe for this video.
A wise man
like
once
Mario
said, "To be
Among Us
cringe
characters.
is to be
Okay, guys,
free."
time to vote. Yes, you heard that right. Today we will be making Mario-themed Among Us crewmates, and we're gonna start by making some aluminum croutons. These very poisonous salad accessories will act as a core for the inside of our crewmates and save us on some clay. Now, the shape of Among Us crewmates are quite simple, so I don't really need to explain much on that front, but I chose this for our craft this week because I hyperfixate on stupid ideas and they haunt the empty hallways inside my head until I make them come to life with clay. It's truly a curse I wouldn't wish upon anyone. And speaking of curses, I'm gonna need to break out my witch's hat for this part. I'm gonna draw an incredibly advanced magic circle so I can get 5 identical crewmates that we can then customize with some Mario-themed designs. Now, I don't want a repeat of the first episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, so proceed with caution during this part. My, that worked quite swimmingly, actually. Let's dispose of the evidence and sand them down until they're nice and smooth. Now, considering my hands are not 3D printers that can just recreate any object pixel for pixel, I'd say these are quite close in shape and size, which I'm really happy with. The base form is all ready for their classic little bubble helmets, and I sculpted one at first until I was happy with it. I'm going to create a base template with this one, and just trace the bottom on some parchment paper. This was so I can make 5 helmets that cover the same amount of real estate. Once I had traced that, I rolled out a thick rope of clay and cut out equal amounts for all of the helmets. Then I just formed my half ovals on top of the template I made. I tried to get them as smooth as possible so that way when I sanded them it'd be really quick, and I attached one to each crewmate with the help of some bacon bond. These are looking suspiciously good so far, so let's finish this task so we can get to customizing them with some Nintendo DLC. Alright, the base for our crewmates is all done. I'm getting the strange urge to reveal what Mario characters we'll be using as inspiration. Whoa, I didn't know I could do that. So let's put these away and start working on all of our characters before I get too distracted. First up is the golden child of the Mario family, Mario. I'm gonna outfit him with his classic blue overalls and his red hat. Now, I'm not the first to make Nintendo Among Us characters, actually. I'm using some designs that I found on Google for specifically Mario, Peach, and Bowser, just because it would be too hard to create designs that are better than the ones I saw, though I was completely original for the backpacks I made for them and Bowser Jr. and Toad. Sometimes art is just realizing that other people are much more competent than you, and just adding your twist to it is enough. But anyway, the last thing to add is his glorious mustachio before we can give him a backpack. Now, all Among Us characters can be customized in the game with different hats and skins, but I realized there is no option to customize the little backpacks they're wearing. So I'm revolting against these creative limitations and giving all of the crewmates the custom backpacks that they deserve. Mario in this case is getting a classic green pipe, and we can move on to Princess Peach. For Princess Peach, we're going to start with the dark pink sash that sits at her hips, and I'm just using 3 thin rolls of clay on each side and shaping them with one of my silicone tools. For her backpack, I'm going to be using the blue broach she has on every dress, I think, ever, and I'm doing the backpack first so I can shape her hair around it. Looking good so far, and now it's time for her hair, which is just a bunch of different sized rolls of clay, pinched and pressed to have triangular shaped ends, and blended together with some acetone. Next is her crown, which I'm cutting triangles from a thin sheet of clay, connecting both ends and securing it on her hair with some bacon bond. And lastly for our princess is her earrings and crown jewels before we can move on to Toad, or in this case, Captain Toad. Now, I chose to do Captain Toad only because I couldn't think of a unique themed backpack for normal Toad, and Captain Toad already has his own backpack, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Captain Toad has an explorer's outfit, so I give him the belt, belt buckle, and belt straps, and some pockets before I can move on to his backpack and headlamp. Captain Toad wears a leather backpack with a big piece of paper, presumably a map, sticking out under the top flap. So I start making the bottom portion of it before getting distracted and working on his headlamp. I add a simple strap across his huge, bulbous mushroom head and use some scrap fabric to add texture. Then I sculpt a little thumbtack looking thing and add some spires to the middle. These will act as the filament for his light, and I'll fill in the empty space with UV resin. Alright, and with Toad off to adventure in my oven, it's time to work on my favorite design, Bowser. First thing we have to do is turn him into a goth girl and give him some spiked straps around both of his legs. I made a hearty serving of forbidden Dippin' Dots because I'll also need some of these spikes for his toenails and his shell backpack. Once I attach those, I can give him a tail, which I will also add spikes to, and then I can give him some choice scales. I think this small detail really makes him my favorite of the bunch. It isn't too much to make it look hyper-realistic and horrifying, but it's just enough to remind you that he is, in fact, a lizard. Our Koopa would not be a Koopa King without his horn, so I'm gonna squish down a ball of clay to act as the base of his horn before adding the horn itself. He is seriously so cute, I just want to destroy him. Okay, anyway, onto his backpack. We'll be using his shell as the backpack, and of course we're gonna work in layers, so first thing to do is give him a turtle shell with a border. To get the spikes on his shell, I just followed the same procedure I did with the horns on his head, and finally we can move on to his son, Bowser Jr. I'm starting off with his goofy haircut, and by the way, the footage of me adding Bowser's hair was deleted on accident, but just know I basically did the same thing as what you just saw. I add mini horns to his head, a smaller tail, and eyebrows for maximum attitude display because Bowser Jr. is a sussy little baka. He's looking quite cute now, but we have to give him his backpack, and I of course decided to go with the Koopa Clown Car as that is Junior's vehicle of choice. I first started with a sphere and just cut the top part flat so I could add a rim around it. Then I assembled the propeller parts to the bottom, which definitely at no point fell off after I baked them. And lastly, to finish up the backpack, I gave it 2 eyes, the 4 dots around the eyes, and its Kylie Jenner lips. The last thing we need to do for Junior is give him his neckerchief. His neckerchief? Neckerchief. You get the point. Alright, we have officially moved on to painting our little sussy figurines, and first up is Mario. I tried out a new paint in that first shot, but as you could see, it kind of looked like I let blue cotton candy melt on him, so I went back to the old cheap paint and it worked like a charm. He gets his classic red and blue coloring, a green pipe, and dark brown for his mustache. I give all of the helmets the same light blue, which I will add shading and highlights to later. But after painting his logo red and his buttons yellow, we can move on to Princess Peach. Princess Peach gets a really pretty light pink over her whole body and a darker pink for the sash at her hips. And I promise you it's darker, it just looks the exact same when it's wet. Her hair gets a highlighter yellow, and I add some gold to that yellow to darken it and add a bit of shine for her crown and the outside of her brooch. Most of her jewels get an elegant cerulean blue, except for 2 on her crown, which I just used the darker pink to color. After I paint her helmet blue, I decided to use some UV resin to add gloss to her backpack and other jewels, and it turned out so clear that you can see me in the reflection. Hello there. After adding the resin to her crown jewels and earrings, Princess Peach is all done, and next up is Sir Captain Toad. Captain Toad gets a Jake from State Farm khaki all over his body, and I use a light orangey brown for his leather belt and leather backpack. He gets the classic red spots on his shroom head, and I repurposed that red for his bandana. His headlamp gets a bright yellow for the band part and a silver for the lamp. Inside the lamp I paint it yellow and fill it up with some UV resin. Next up is my boy, the Koopa King, and he's getting a base coat of yellow. I've always thought that Bowser is one of the coolest looking villains. I would honestly love more Mario games like Bowser's Inside Story, where you get to play as Bowser. Also, opinions on who Bowser Jr.'s mother is? I don't think Peach could have a body like that after popping out several lizard children, so although it's common to think of Peach as the mom, I'm a bit skeptical about that theory. If there are any Mario lore experts in the comments, let me know some more fan theories on who Bowser Jr.'s mom is. But anyway, back to the craft. I'm cleaning up some of the paint lines and adding a lighter gray to his spike straps, after which I can color the base of all of his spikes and horns with a burnt orange. The horns and spikes themselves get a beige, and as his final detail, I paint the scales on his body a slightly darker yellow than his skin tone. After that, I paint his helmet just like the rest of them and move on to our last figurine, Bowser Jr. Jr. gets a slightly more vibrant yellow skin tone than his father, and the green marking on top of his head is changed to be appropriately vibrant as well. The Koopa Clown Car is colored with the same green I used for Mario's pipe, and I paint a white base coat for the face before adding the orange lips, black eyes, and blushing cheeks. I use the same colors from Bowser's horns on Junior's horns, and his top ponytail and eyebrows get a slightly more orangey red. The band holding his hair up gets a dark gray, and we can move on to his bandana. The design on his bandana was supremely easy because it's meant to look like a scribbly drawing, so I didn't even have to go over it more than once, which was a welcome relief. And the last thing I have to do is give him a quick pedicure with some white paint, definitely not because I forgot to add his toenails earlier, and after painting his helmet blue, all of the figures were done once I went back and added the shading and highlights you see on Among Us helmets. Now we have 5 figurines which desperately need a cool method of display, so I decided to place them around the emergency meeting table in the cafeteria. To make the table and chairs, I cut out the shapes of their tops and added a thin layer of clay to the edges to give them some height. The emergency meeting button was sculpted last, and the button was attached with some bacon bond, which, once completed, meant we can finally move on to painting them. The cafeteria tables are all one blue color, so it's pretty simple to paint, and the emergency button was even easier because all I had to do was press it. Now the emergency meeting button has a clear case over it, so I cut out a few squares from a clear plastic plate and used scant amounts of UV resin to connect the pieces. Lastly, I cut out and primed a circular piece of XPS foam before painting on the cafeteria tile and gluing all of our figurines in place. And with that said, it's time to show you the final product. Thank you all for watching until the end. I appreciate it very much. My cringe receptors were fully satisfied with this build, so next craft, which I'm not hinting at all what it will be right now during the outro as I speak in front of you, will be super cute and much less cringe, so stick around for that, and I'll see you next time.